Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Soul Focused Radio. This is your host, Martin Friedman, and welcome to part 2 of our conversation with Felicia. Um, I really hope that the first one was impactful to you. By the way, if you haven't seen or listened to the first one, go do that now, really. And then come and listen to this one or watch this part 2. Again, I'm not going to say a lot. I'm just going to say that when I rewatched it, I was touched and I was moved. And, all I can say is just sit back and enjoy and get ready for some pretty deep vulnerability and truthfulness. And with that, I invite you to enjoy part 2 of this conversation.
This is life-giving. Really is. It's life-giving. And as I'm sitting here looking at you all, I'm feeling that love and that compassion. And I must say, and that grace that you're extending to yourselves is what I hear come through, grace. So without using the word, you're living out grace with yourself as well as others. And that's powerful. That's a powerful practice that you all have committed to.
She got nicks up your sleeve.
I know, it's like, oh my goodness. Okay, so grace. I was raised, I'm gonna shift gears here. I was raised, y'all know, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, woo woo, Steelers forever.
Ooh. You see the aggressions I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, living with somebody from Pittsburgh, you are. So.
I should have worn black and yellow.
my D and Dustin, this is the real mixed marriage. The real mixed marriage is a Browns fan and a Steelers family. That's the real mixed marriage. Go ahead, honey. Go ahead, honey.
So something, I feel like we're sitting down at the kitchen dining room table, and so the question, I was raised with, making terrible pals, during the 70s of the steel curtain and at home in Pittsburgh, Rocky Blyer and Franco Harris. I felt like they were family. So, my dad and my brothers were steeped in, that Steeler country kind of mentality. And so I was like, when I grow up, I'm gonna date and marry a guy who does not believe in sports. Now, meanwhile, I played basketball in high school. I've been physically active all my life. It's always been a priority in my life to be fit, even before it became popular, So I wanted to ask you, something that I've always wanted to ask you all, and Martin has heard this probably already, but with football, how do you, and I've thought about how to share this question because it's important, intention is important. So knowing that you all are loving, tender, cisgender men, how do you reconcile, you know it, my D, how do you reconcile the aggressiveness, the violence that goes on the football, in that football space with you all's peaceful, loving, humane practices?
Hell of a question.
I am doing really well. Like the second, third time my D has said that.
Yeah, that's a hell of a question, because it's one of those questions that seldomly gets asked, because there's usually no platform to ask cisgendered men that, because they're not necessarily taking a stand to nonviolence or a stand for peace. And it's at the same time, it's like when you ask that question, it's like there's a sense of shame at a lower level, in all honesty, that, you know, we'll still find excitement in violence acts that are quote unquote sports, right? Because we are conscious of the impact it's having on humanity that we've normalized, that we see absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I've played football on every level. And so I was a very violent player. And the reason why I was so violent was because I had suppressed so much from, you know, the trauma of growing up and having to become an adult as a child. So I had a lot of resentment more than I had regret. And that resentment, you know, became rage and anger and aggressiveness. And if I wouldn't have had football, I know I would be doing time. Because when I would see the level of violence that I would demonstrate on the football field and how much it excited me, because unconsciously it was a release of all of that, having to suppress myself as a young child and not being able to go out and play with the kids and to be able to do what the other kids were doing. I had to take care of business, as they would say. So that stuff was just constantly building up in me. And I remember one night, you know, a part of a fraternity, Omega Psi Phi, right? And we would, you know, we had
Omega. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, there was a party, and I remember getting into a fight with a guy from another fraternity. And I remember being in the police was right there standing right next to me, and I hit the guy in the jaw right in front of the police. And I remembered like having a sense of, it was almost like an orgasm from the level of violence that I demonstrated, how it felt to me. And it was in that moment, I was like, oh shit, I gotta get a hold of this. This is not good. But it transferred from the football field to other things. And I saw the track that I was on, where it was going to bring me, because I had a lot to be mad about. You know, when you think about racism, you think about the poverty that I grew up in, think about the trauma, you know, the domestic violence between my mother and father in the house when I was a little boy. All of that was just like, I'm walking around like a time bomb. I remember in college, they would say to me that I walked around looking like I could beat up concrete, because I was so serious. I was very, very serious. Didn't have a sense of humor, you know, except when I like got away from everything, that I would put my guards down to be, because I was always on guard. I knew I was going to college on a football scholarship, and I knew that if I didn't take advantage of that, it could mean something detrimental to my family. So I had to take advantage of it. So I couldn't make any mistakes. I had to do everything right. So it was, you're talking about intense. So any minute, if I got into a confrontation with somebody, all of that was coming at you. You know, so in a lot of ways, I was like superhuman in relationship to my strength, because all of that stuff would come out in any form of a moment of aggression. And I realized then that I really had to start working on growing in a way where I could free the little boy in me. You know, he needed to have some space to grow, and sort of what they call reparenting. And I started reparenting myself before I even knew what that was. I was doing it because I knew that if I didn't, I wasn't going to last too much long in society, because anybody could bump into me and it would be another level.
Thank you, Mahdi, for being so
You're welcome.
vulnerable.
Thank you for asking that question, because, you know, football is, you know, we almost like, it's like a altar, and we get in front of television and we pray to the God of football every Sunday, and it's Super Bowl getting ready to come up, when, you know, there's a lot of people going to be praying to that, you know, shouting and putting all the energy into it. And it's an exciting game, but it is violent. You know, it is violent.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mahdi.
The first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question is extreme cognitive dissonance. And I think, I think about, for us as men in the society, I mean, we were all socialized into football. There was almost no way that you could, if you were to be a man and how we were conditioned to be a man, there's no way you would not have an affinity towards football.
Right.
Mahdi talks about that anger he felt as a child. So my Aunt Jessie lived in projects. And, me and Mahdi laugh about this because I would never let my children play football today, but we used to play tackle football in a field with rocks and, broken bottles. And we were trying to really hurt each other. Truly, we were trying to hurt each other because that was the condition. But what was really going on is that each of us as children had so much unrecognized pain and anger in us. And that was the only way, unconsciously, that we saw to let that out. So when I say cognitive dissonance, we like to think of ourselves as being so deep, politically, socially, but football is akin to war, but we say we're against war. Football is akin to violence, but we will be extremely upset at the shootings that we see in Seattle or Houston or, in Miami or, Pittsburgh, right? But we're contributing to the conditioning in spite of everything that we're conscious of. So we are walking with cognitive dissonance and football is racist as can be. There's so many things that are problematic about football that I will get up and celebrate another young man getting tackled so hard, but I would never let my child be in that position, And so, sports are sports are so big in my life. I coach pretty high level basketball, AU, very high level basketball, and that has been a process for me. It's been a lot of things. It gave me a closeness to my oldest son. We went through years and years of basketball together. That just was a bond between us, But also as I look back, as a coach, I've said some awful things to kids, like don't be the P word, or that you're being soft, or you better not be over here crying, things that really were perpetuating things that consciously that I'm against, but that stuff comes out unconsciously. Now, of course, I made some pivots around that, and I'm able to have some conversations with the other coaches that I'm in relationship now, but the conditioning around it is so deep, and as men, as grown men that are in a leadership position, we're perpetuating toxic masculinity, and we don't even see that as happening because most of us as men have not dealt with what's going on with inside of us. And I guess the last thing I would say is that I'm a very serious martial artist, and I do a very violent martial art. It's not about forms or anything like that. It's about fighting. But I'll tell you, the more that the deeper I get into martial arts, the less that I want to have. I was telling Mahdi, I'm not fighting nobody. I don't want to hurt no one, right? And so, it's a hold on so many things at one time. And I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm just really kind of owning that there's a dissonance that's really unacceptable. And the last thing I'll say is I watched this war movie on the Korean War, just on Prime. And the reason why I watched it, because I was just back in Jersey talking to my grandfather, and he told me he was in the Korean War. And he was telling me about, them getting bombed every night and how scary that was. So I didn't know a lot about the Korean War, just loosely. And so as I watched this documentary, it blew my mind what other human beings could do to other human beings. Essentially, for something that really didn't concern them at all. Some ego-based politicians had this, design of control and dominance and imposition, all that kind of stuff. But these human beings were living in hell. And it's just how we do that to each other. But, I make Mahdi laugh, but my grandfather, I grew up watching Western, so I watch Gunsmoke, right? And, you watch Gunsmoke, Marshall Dillon is a mass murderer. He'll kill a bunch of people. Then he's like, let's go to the tavern and have a beer. And we can watch football because we've been conditioned with some shit that is so antithetical to us showing up as healthy human beings.
So true, Dustin. Shit.
Thank you.
That's really true.
Dustin, thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty.
I honestly have very little to add to what both of y'all just said, because I think you really covered it. I never played it. I played it on the, on the street. and I played it in the schoolyard. And when I was older, I was bigger. I was never very athletic or coordinated, but I was big. And so definitely had a lot of pretty serious collisions with people, and I got a lot out of it, like you all talked about. I think the only thing I would add is that there was a lot of bonding with my father over football. One of my very earliest memories of being with my dad, probably 4 or 5 years old, is sitting in the TV room at our house, and like everything was like, go, go, go. My dad would like get up out of his chair and go like, go, run, run, go, 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 or get him, get him, get him, get him. And I can remember just being a little kid and just like being next to my dad going, go. I was just like mimicking him. And I studied on sports, like all sports. I basically missed my career of being like a sports radio person or a play-by-play, because I knew everything about everybody. I used to read every single word in the sports page. I would memorize box scores. I knew what everybody did in every sport, even hockey, back in the day. And I say even hockey because we didn't even have a hockey team. But I was obsessed with the observing of sports, the rooting for teams, to this day, like, and you're right. I mean, I can't argue with anything you said, Felicia, or what either of you said, Dustin or Mahdi. Like, it is antithetical. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical. And I also can't imagine not watching football. Like, I can't imagine it. And Felicia, like we weren't watching TV. We didn't have a TV 90% of the time we've been together. And you're like, you told me part of the reason why you wanted to get a nice TV was so I could watch football. And you you clear out and let me watch football on this nice big TV, which is, I know, a sacrifice for you because you don't really like it and you feel the way that you feel about it. So I can't describe it, other than to say that it's so familiar to me, and it's hard to imagine life without it. And maybe I need to go a season without watching football and see what comes up for me and what I'm feeling. I also said I could never live without bagels, and real bagels, and not gluten-free bagels, but real bagels. And I haven't had a real bagel now in like a year and a half, 2 years since COVID. So maybe if I can live life without bagels, I can live life without football. Because I remember arguing with a doctor one time who told me to stop eating bagels to lose weight. And I said, I will never stop eating bagels. I got mad at him. I'll never stop eating bagels, especially when I go to New York. So maybe I can live without football. But I just, in terms of the analysis that Dustin and Mahdi just gave, I mean, I have nothing to add to that other than, just that for me, it also brings me very, very fond memories of bonding with my dad. And I love the strategy of it. I love, knowing a lot about it and even never having played it, and like having these deep conversations with Dustin about the way defenses are run and, all of this stuff. But it is, Dustin, like you said, it is almost like having a conversation about military strategy too. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I would just have to say that I'm living, like Dustin said, in a state of cognitive dissonance or a state of hypocrisy around it, and probably not going to stop in the near future.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was thinking about I want to add something.
Yes.
Based on what Martin was saying. As I grow, I watch less and less of it. It is not even conscious that I'm like consciously forcing myself to not watch it. My desire to watch it has dwindled. It keeps going down, especially when you think about not just the idea of masculinity, but the idea of what's going on in the world and how the world is changing so rapidly, and wanting to be a contributor to a better world. You put your energy someplace else, because so much of our energy has been attracted to those games to distract us from putting energy into the things that really matter most. Because at the end of the day, after you put all your energy in watching those games, it has no real bearing on your life.
Sure.
Right? And I know people who will argue let me tell you this about myself. I was so into it that if my team lost, it would knock me out for a week.
Yeah.
Literally, and mentally and emotionally, I'll be gone.
Yeah.
I'll be checked out. I've been in a bad mood. You talk to me, I'm short with you because now here it is. I didn't connect it to this team like this is my life. And what happens to this team, if this team loses, then I'm in a place where I feel like I didn't lose. That's some deep psychological stuff.
Yeah.
I think even more than the violence that you see is the psychological connection that we make to teams that pull our energy away from what we should be channeling our energy into to make our lives better, to make our relationships with our children better. We're giving it to that. Because I know some people who, I mean, they deposit, massive amounts of energy and attention into sports. Something that has no real bearing on the outcome of life.
Mahdi, what we would eat on Sundays was based on whether the Browns won or lost during football season. Like my mom would monitor, like literally we had hamburger if they lost and steak if they won. And that is not a lie. That is real. Like she would be like, she'd check in the fourth quarter and I'm not kidding. It's just, and, when I used to work as a truck driver in Cleveland in the 80s, like everybody lived and died. Like the mood of the city was just like, you could just tell. You wouldn't even have to ask somebody if you came to Cleveland and didn't follow sports, you could know just by interacting with people whether the team had won or lost. And it is amazing, Now, I thought about a lot of the hardest questions that you would ask, Felicia. I never thought that football would be like the hardest question. This is like the hardest question.
I remember how Dustin would get depressed when Seattle would lose.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't even answer the phone. If Seattle lost, he wouldn't even answer the phone.
We had group therapy sessions, Dustin. We had group therapy sessions.
I texted, why you pick up the phone, bro? Pick up the phone.
Like, he knows this is not a good time for me.
He knows.
I don't care about ego reduction right now.
That's real. That's real. You didn't care about ego. You cared about ego inflation at that moment. And check this out too, though. Like when Seattle won the championship, and Dustin and I were together, we watched it with Megan as well. And afterwards, like I'm sitting in the car because I had a little bit to drink. I didn't drink much. I had a little bit to drink, and I needed to chill out. So I went and got some food and sitting in my car. And I remember Dustin called me, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, everything's changed now. Like a team that I love won the Super Bowl. I'm like, everything's changed now, bro. My life is gonna be so much better. Like our organizing and racing is gonna get better. Because now I know finally, like somebody I root for can win. That's not a lie. I thought my whole life. I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you think about the Saints, the Hawks, the Steelers, whoever we're talking about. It could be the Golden State Warriors. It could be whatever sport. It's a place where we as a society do collective shadow projection. Ooh. We'll put all of our stuff on there to do exactly what Mahdi was saying, so we don't see what's happening right in our own lives where we do have control. Because the truth is, it is not like Russell Wilson is waking up saying, dang, Soul Focus Group didn't get that contract yesterday. Man, this is a rough, you know what I'm saying? It's just, it's
Russell Wilson is. He's Sierra's husband.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
That's his real claim to fame.
We do that, and that's structurally intentional within our society. As Mahdi said, you could turn on sports radio and you will hear people have the deepest analysis about something that it's just a game. It doesn't matter. But then what's happening in their own community, what's happening in their own family, people can't even talk about. So it's a place for us. It's a place for us to project a lot of stuff to keep from dealing with the stuff we need to deal with to grow and be a healthy society.
Right.
At every level, right?
Yes. This is beautiful, you all. I'm just honored to be able to hold space for this conversation. It really impacted me, Mahdi, when you said that, the violence was orgasmic. Because for me, that's where it crosses. And people don't talk about how it's a sexual experience, and so I wanted to ask you all, how have your, and you know, this is up to you how intimate you wish to get here, but how has, with all your growth and your understanding and your practices, how has your ideas even about having sex or sexual relationships changed?
Wow. That's, yeah, you
Forget about football. Forget about football being the hardest question.
I thought football was the hardest question.
Yeah, I could actually
I
go
love
first.
this.
I could actually go first unless one of you all want.
Go ahead, bro. Go ahead, bro.
Because this is actually something I was thinking about. I was thinking about this, and I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up or not when we talked about the football. I'm going to bring it up. But I think, you know, I think in terms of, you know, being in a sexual relationship with somebody, I think that I'm going to go back to what I said earlier around loving myself. And you know, when I'm in a place of self-love, I'm a better lover, you know, externally too, because I'm clearing up a lot of energy. Also, the work that I've done with, you know, Mahdi as my coach and friend and brother, and Dustin as my friend and brother, you know, has helped me like also like just value myself more physically. I remember Mahdi talking to you one time, and you're like, you know, your physical body will always tell what's going on with you. And so if your physical body's not right, it lets you know that the rest of you is out of balance. And so like changing my physical body, losing weight, honoring my body I know it's made me a better lover, because, you know, it's freed up energy that was blocked spiritually and emotionally too. And, you know, for me, like, you know, having experienced sexual trauma at a very, very young age, you know, under 5, like sex has always been very challenging for me to feel comfortable and to be in my body and not in my head. I believe that at times in my life I've researched the idea of sexual anorexia. And I believe that I've experienced that because of going through sexual trauma as a very small child. And, you know, where I have dysmorphia, you know, like that's the way they talk about sexual anorexia, is like having dysmorphia in the same way anorexic would around weight, and also like going like binging on sex. And for me, that wasn't so much with other people, but it was more around pornography. I would binge on pornography, and pornography would allow me to feel in control, you know. And this came to me as you were talking about football. Part of the reason why I'm on a journey to be free of pornography is because while there's aspects of it that I really like and are very attractive to me, you know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the actual idea of like looking at people having sex, but it's all that goes along with pornography. And yet I'll still look at it, even though I know there's so much like messed up with like why women are, especially women, but men too, but especially why women are doing it. Most of them aren't doing it because of sexual liberation. Most of them are doing it because of addiction, because of being trapped into it for various reasons, locally and you know, nationally and internationally. And so I had a similar thought as you were talking about football. Pornography is antithetical to what I believe about humanity and everybody being treated with love and being able to be fully themselves, because I don't believe that's possible. And yet there's still an attraction for me there that I'm working on, like an addiction. There's still an attraction for me there, because there's, in the same way that I get pleasure out of football, I get pleasure out of pornography. And my journey is one of the biggest journey, I would say, in terms of becoming soul focused and ego reduction, and, you know, seeing Dustin and Mahdi in many ways, and you too, you know, we don't always use the same language, but you're on this journey to fully integrate, you know, yourself too, Felicia. But like having the three of you and other folks in my life as a model, the main thing has been to start telling the truth. And I think that I've done a lot of stuff in the shadows, and there's an addiction to being in the shadows. And so I think the way that I'm stepping into courage to tell the truth, no matter what I think people might think of me, which is the epitome of ego, right? Thinking about what people are going to think about what I just said, and spending time and energy on that. So that's changing my relationship. It's changing my relationship to sexuality in terms of pornography, and it's also changing my relationship to sexuality in terms of, my relationship with you, my sexual relationship with you. So that's how I would answer that question. And it was amazing that you asked it, because I started to go there even during the football question.
Thank you, Martin, for being so vulnerable. Thank you.
Yes.
I really appreciate the question, and as I'm sitting here listening to Martin and just reflecting in my mind, I've definitely gone 360 in terms of my relationship to sex and sexual relationships with women in my, which is one woman in my life right now. So, I think a lot about the conditioning that I received. Like every adult man that I was around cheated on, mothers, grandmothers, aunties, and then I think about all of my peers, and I'm still in relationship with my best friend from childhood. We've known each other since first grade. And we talk about the insane stuff we used to all talk about as kids, basically like, how many women, if you didn't get with a lot of women, didn't have a lot of sex, you were basically not shit, right? And so there was a lot of socialization that your worth was based around how many women you could manipulate into sex with, if you had game or not, and so, so much of my, late teen years, early 20s was about going out to clubs, trying to hook up with people, and then I carried that habit throughout my whole life. I pretty much was unfaithful in every relationship that I was in. I was manipulative, dishonest, dynamics of being controlling, right? And what was underneath that for me was it was another drug for me. I again felt this gaping hole inside of me. And essentially, because I felt like I was extremely unlovable. I would front like I wasn't, but inside I felt like I was unlovable. And so if this woman would sleep with me, would show that I was desired, right? And so it was always chasing that magical, that hook, that hit of a, it was like a heroin hit almost, like, oh, you are lovable, but as soon as the deed was done, it was like, holding go away. And, and of course I've had to look at that addictive quality that was rooted in those, childhood groundwater messages, and the transformation for me is, and I share this with Mahdi and Martin, like, because, notorious womanizer for many years. But now I can't even imagine, first of all, lying and cheating and hurting the woman that I love. That's number one. And I did hurt her and caused a lot of shame for her, a lot of pain for her. And I've hurt other women in the same way and caused a lot of hurt and shame, so I'm thinking back to your earlier question around reconciling, and regrets and things like that. But now for me, sex is about intimacy. It's about connection. It's about passion. And it's about allowing myself to be vulnerable and really seeing it. I never, ever, just sitting here saying this, 10 years ago, you would have never heard me say this, but that sex is a very sacred responsibility that I take very serious. And, and like, it's crazy because I have no desire whatsoever. Like if I wasn't in a relationship right now, there's no desire in me to go out and chase a bunch of women. The only person I can imagine sharing my sexual energy with right now is someone that I legitimately, truly felt a depth of connection with. And that's what's most important for me, that depth of connection, and then being able to express myself sexually through that is just a level of truth that I've never experienced, So, my thinking around it was like, again, all that conditioning, because I'm telling you, as boys growing up, at least where I grew up in South Jersey, I mean, it's like, you better be like, what's wrong with you, And this is like from all the adults around me, every man, this is a message that I got,
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Dustin.
Yeah, thank you, Dustin.
Thank you.
As you were saying that, I was thinking about my journey, my sexuality journey with my view of sex, and it starts with my mother, because at the age of 5, my mom and dad had divorced, living with my mother for a little while. My 2 brothers and my older sister were sleeping on the floor, and one night, like 3 o'clock in the morning, actually, I witnessed her having sex with a man. That would interfere with my view of sex for a long time. And then on top of that, having this very religious background, going to church all the time, and sex being linked directly to a sin if you're participating in it outside of marriage, would then load me up with so much guilt around sex. So I had this guilt around sex, but at the same time, being a Scorpio, having a high sex drive, right? High desire to express it. Then also living in a society where, as a man, you are seen as being powerful if you have more than one woman, if you can have women, right? So there was this thing that was cultivated in me was a disloyalty to women, right? And that disloyalty to women would take up space in my life for a while until my daughters would start being born, and then that changed everything.
Right.
You know, because it really made me reevaluate everything. But I remember there was an experience I had in college where I had my eyes on this woman who I really liked a lot, and I really liked her, like genuinely really liked her. And I remember courting her for like 3 months hard, you know, putting everything into it. And we got to a point to where she said, you know, she was ready for us to, you know, have sex with each other, make love to each other. So I took the little money I had, I rented a hotel room, borrowed my roommate's car. We went to the hotel room. We are she takes off her clothes and I get ready to take off mine. And she says, no, wait, I changed my mind. Take me home. I said, okay, I'll take you home. But after I dropped her off, of course, in my mind, I'm like, how in the hell she's able to do that? Right. I was wondering in my mind how she was able to just stop everything cold in midstream. What did she get? You know, I was fascinated and at the same time pissed off, but I didn't express it verbally or outwardly. I kept it inside myself. But I remember going to my room that night in my dorm room, laying down on my back thinking, how did she do that? I thought that was like a real demonstration of power, because I felt like I was manipulated. And, you know, I really felt that way. And so I started scheming. And I'm not proud of this, but I started scheming. My scheme was, I'm going to get her, right? So for the next 3 months, I would continue to press, you know, dating her, taking her out to dinner, taking whatever little dimes I had to do whatever. And we end up back in the exact same hotel room. And this time, you know, she takes all her clothes off. I don't take mine off. I look at her body and I say, nah, I don't want it. Put your clothes on, I'm gonna bring you home. I feel very ashamed that happened. Then what I watched, which changed my relationship to sex totally, I watched what it did to her after, psychologically. It had an impact on her where she ended up, and she was a beautiful, good woman. But she was searching for an answer that I never gave her because I would never tell her why I did that. So she went out into the world looking for an answer from other guys to try to answer the question that I created in her mind. So psychologically, I played a psychological game with her. Yeah. And I was young. I was in my teens. I was maybe about 17, 18 years old. But I understood the power of sexuality at that time, but I didn't really understand. And it really messed her up, you know. She ended up sleeping with a whole bunch of guys on the football team that I knew, and she did it on purpose because I knew them. But it was diabolical on my part to do it. But my life around sex had been so convoluted, so confusing, with the religious thing, the guilt around seeing my mother have sex with somebody else, and all of that together. I would find myself after that experience challenging myself to change how I see women, because that was the problem. I had subconsciously I had a negative view of women because of what happened with my mother. Right. It had been developed in my subconscious because I felt like she had betrayed us, by that act. And that would transfer to me having that secret feeling about women in my mind as I would develop relationships with women. And I remember after that incident, and I felt so bad about how I did to the woman in college. And I wanted to make amends to it, but I started to really re-examine the value of women to me. I really started making myself consciously aware that I really had struggled with the idea of seeing women for more than sex, more than what they can do for you, right? Raising your children and cooking and whatnot. And so that altered my journey. My journey became then to educate myself and to be able to see women for being who they really are, right? So that changed my whole approach to sex, because now sex became an expression of true connection, but it would take a while. And then when I had my first daughter, that changed. It was game over right there. It became all about being able to see and value women for who they are, for their intelligence, their gifts, what they bring to life. And I remember being given an opportunity to work with these group of women from Trinidad. It was like 15 of them, and they asked me to coach them. And I had never coached all women's group before. And when they were sharing their life, I was like, where in the hell have I been? Because I'm listening to women go through all of they have been going through. And I was like, this is happening right in front of my eyes, and I didn't have the lens to see it. I felt so ashamed and so small. I was like, I can't believe I've been living in this world and not seeing people that have an impact on your life every day because of what I've been socialized to believe and the things that I had experienced. I had blinders on, and I didn't realize those blinders were there. Being able to work with them, and that program I did with them is called the Ultimate Woman's Project, right? And we did it for at least 3 years. We were able to reach, I think about 200 women in that process. But that was when I really got educated, because I sat at the feet of women and just listened to them. And that brought me into a different understanding of sexuality, different understanding of sex and its relationship to women than I had before. But the biggest part of that was my daughters had made it mandatory. Having 3 daughters, I really had to transform the way I viewed women, secretly. I had to go against the grain of the programming and the socialization that we get as men that blinds us to the women in the front of our face every day.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mahdi.
You're welcome.
Wow.
Mahdi, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, you all are touching tender parts of me, and this is oh.
Felicia, the question you just asked, as I'm listening to Mahdi talk, reflecting on what Martin talked about, and I'm talking about a collective experience right now. There's no collective space for men to really address this. And I think about everything that we're talking about right now. Almost every man who's listening to this should be able to relate on some level. And just, what I was thinking about in terms of myself is just how much we as men, including myself, has shown up in relationship to women in a very self-centered, childlike way. And most of us as men, and I think Mahdi alluded to this earlier, we talk a lot about emotional sobriety, right? Most of us are showing up basically like that 7-year-old child. That's where we stop growing in terms of our emotional development. When I think about my relationship, my addictive relationship to sex and women, it was all about what I need. When I talked about filling that hole, it was all about me, right? And no sense of like how this was landing upon them, right? And just, so you have that part, but then I missed so many beautiful relationships where I could have had a relationship with so many beautiful women over the course of my life at a level of depth that I sacrificed because I wasn't yet prepared to deal with the hole within inside of myself. So I say all that to say, I'm not sitting in a place of judgment around that. I mean, if I could do it differently, I guess I would, but I can't. And so now how do I show up with the young men that are in my care? first and foremost, starting with my children. So I look at my 26-year-old Kalen. Kalen is so far from that. How he treats his wife as a partner, as a father is like, whoa, you know, it's beautiful. I mean, the level of maturity and respect. And as I'm raising these two little boys, you know, what I'm trying to teach them primarily by example in terms of how I relate to their mother, but also consciously, right? Then I have the boys that I coach and, you know, other men that I engage with through, you know, many different avenues. It's an opportunity to, again, transmute those lessons that Martin's talking about, Mahdi's talking about, provide a level of intimate sharing so we can begin to do some things differently, you know, as men, right? And be able to show up as fully actualized human beings. Because really, if you take the totality of maleness within this society, we're like stunted children.
You know, Dustin, I really appreciated you saying that. One of the themes that I heard and what all three of us said too was there was a level of shame for all three of us. And I'm just thinking about the trick that's been done on us to make something that's so natural, the most natural thing, right? To have there be shame around it, and just how misinformed and how much just trash was put into our groundwater, our subconscious programming around what sex is, what it isn't, what it means to be a man in a sexual way, and just the fact that our stories are all different in certain ways. And the one of the things I heard that was similar was a sense of shame at some point or other around sexuality for each of us.
I think that part of the reason why the shame was also there is because sex is sacred. We know that in our soul.
That's right.
But what has been fed into our consciousness is the sporting of it. We've made a sport out of something sacred. Because if you think about what sex leads to, it leads to opening the portal for life to come into this world. It's a very sacred performance, but we've made a sport out of it. And, you know, like we've done a whole bunch of other things. To do that, we had to be desensitized toward it, you know, and so many things that we experience just completely desensitized us. I remember one evening I was at the library studying when I was in college, and I came back to my room, and I had a roommate. We had a big suite, and they were like 20 guys in the room watching all around the television. I thought they were watching a basketball game or a football game because I'd been in the library all that night. And I was like, they were cheering and yelling. And I was like, I couldn't see the television, couldn't see what was on the screen because there were people all around the television. When I finally got up to it, they were watching porno and they were screaming like a football game. And I was like, what the hell is good? Together, like about 20 guys on the team watching porno. And I was like, wow. I was like, y'all got to get out of my room. They're like, why? Man, this is crazy. Something about this not right, that we would make a sport. It was like a sport. And I was like, man, this is, you know, I wasn't even conscious as where I am now, but I knew even then, I was like, there's something really wrong about this. And it's like, it's really interfering with the sacredness of life, that we would make the altar, because sex is like the altar, right, where life comes into existence. We would make the altar so we defame the altar.
I got to say, we did it too. I did it with my friends in high school. My high school friends, we get a hold of, you know, like a VHS tape on porn and stuff, and we'd watch it in a group. You know, there was no looking on your phone in isolation, like, you know, no, we would, you know, that was something we did as well.
Talking about the dissonance, the cognitive dissonance, because each one of them, of course, and they had a mother, some of them had sisters, but their connection at all was not alive. You know, it was like those circuitry had been cut or severed. Right.
It's just like, you know, our inability, Mahdi, earlier you said love is wanting it good for everyone, right? And having a sense of oneness, but we don't see ourselves as men and women, you know, because essentially on a spiritual level, what we are doing to women, we're doing to ourselves.
Right.
Right.
Right. Dustin.
And
Absolutely.
it feels like at this moment in time, there is a need for a revolutionary, transformational conversation about intimacy, sacredness, love, and what does sex mean. And you know, there's not many collective places where I've seen that happen. You know,
Right.
I mean, I'm fortunate to be in a relationship with you, Felicia. You know, as a sister, we can have these depths of conversation. And other women in my life now that we're having a level of mature conversation, but
Right.
we need to evolve as a human family in terms of what all this means for us and how we express this with each other. You know,
Right.
and
Definitely.
even you know, in the conversation, Felicia, when you're not around, what are the conversations me, Mahdi, and Martin have, and how do we say to each other, "Hold up, bro"? You know what I'm saying? And that's what I love about this relationship. These
Yeah.
relationships, when we are at our best, we're like, no, that's not a reflection of your highest self.
Right. This is beautiful, you all. I personally could go on for hours in talking with you all. This has been so life-giving. It's revelatory, you know, like I'm really elated, and I'm also tender. You know, this is the conversation, Dustin. You know, this is what we just did. We just had the conversation, the tender, vulnerable, intimate conversation about those things that, you know, are practices that we have in our life, practices that we are proud of, and practices that we're not so proud of. And we're all on, you know, the beauty about learning and growing in this spiritual path is we're all going to get there. That's what I know. You know, my spiritual understanding is like we're all going to ascend. It's natural law. Now, how many incarnations, you know, in this life or other lives that it's going to take, no one can tell, you know, but we are all going to ascend. And that's the beauty, you know, of this, and that our children are growing up with this understanding, this level of understanding that we didn't have.
Right.
But we already see evolution in our generation. So I'm really celebrating, but I must say that I have 15 more topics that I want to talk to you all about. So you all got to invite me back. So I'm calling y'all out. I know
Of course.
you know, because there's so much I still want to unpack with you all. You know, as my husband and my brothers, you know, this has just been, you know, this is a wonderful way to spend my Friday. This is an off day for me. So I can't, you know, I can't express to you all with words how beautiful and life affirming. This is life affirming of even my experiences as a little girl, you know, and a teenager and a young adult, you know, what I experienced. And this is so validating. It really is. So I just so appreciate you all. I love you all.
Love you too.
Love you too, Felicia.
You know, prayerfully next time we could continue to unpack, you know, these difficult conversations, because I'm ready.
Look forward to
it. Love
Likewise.
you all.
And I just want to say as we close out, I want to say that, because I didn't say this at the beginning, but I really want to acknowledge the specialness of this for me, because without like the coaching I did with my D and the friendship him and I developed, and without Dustin, who literally introduced us and told me long before I knew you're going to get with her. So this is extra special for me, because you all are the three lights in my life, you know, when I'm feeling like I'm stuck in a dark place, and the interconnectedness between the three of us, the three of you all and myself, is so powerful. I meant to say it at the beginning. I got kind of up in my head. I want to say it before we close out how blessed I am. And none of this would be possible without my two brothers. I wouldn't be with Felicia. So I just want to say that.
Yeah.
You're welcome, bro. You're welcome.
Love you too.
Thank y'all so much for this.
Y'all. I gotta go to the beach, because this is like I'm like soaking wet right now. You know, I know it's too much information for y'all, but I'm sweating profusely. What you all have shared is just so beautiful.
Whew. Okay, that's it for this part of the conversation. As we said at the end, Felicia's going to be back, and we're going to keep this conversation going because this really just scratched the surface of what she wants to talk to us about and what we want to talk to her about. I can just tell you that it was an incredible experience for me, and I know it was for Felicia, and I know it was for Mahdi and for Dustin, and we sure hope it was for you too. We hope that everything you do with us at Soul Focus Group is an incredible experience. And know that we are so appreciative of having you on this journey with us. Know that we love you, we care about you. We want you to come to soulfocusgroup.com and see everything that we're doing because we're excited about what we're doing. You're going to be hearing more about what we're doing all the time now. You're going to be hearing about it on podcasts. You're going to be hearing about it when you go to soulfocusgroup.com, to our website. And, we're doing this because, as I said personally, I'm learning to love myself. And as part of that journey is to let you all know how much I love you and we love you. And we love that you all are doing this work with us. And we're excited, so excited to have you on this journey. So with that said, we ask you, as always, to stay safe, stay well, and most of all, stay soul focused.